Welcome to the third installment of Technique Tuesday. This month, our lift is the overhead press. If you haven't seen our two other videos, our installments of the deadlift or the squat, please just follow the links. Gonna be here or here. I'm not quite sure how to do that yet, but I'm gonna figure it out. This month, the coaches are Brian and Tom, and their information is going to be located in the information about the video below and also in the blog post that's on the OmniFit website. So I just want to preface this video by saying that one of the goals that we have is we've tried to keep the videos short, less than 5 minutes, so that you guys can get the information that's needed without way too much detail. So you might see some things that the coaches didn't mention, and that's totally okay. Their instruction is just to highlight some of the main critiques that are common that we see in our other athletes and our other lifters, and also something that is just easy to articulate through the platform that we're using. So if you have any further questions about any of these lifts, please just let us know. We would love to help. And here we go.
So the first thing I noticed in this video is just her initial setup. Versus having her perform an upright row or a hang clean to get in position, I would have her just set up in the squat rack she has in front of her. I would have her start it at about chest height, and I would have her unrack from about a front squat position, getting her wrists and elbows under the bar when she steps back. When she initially steps back, I would have her widen her stance just a bit wider than she has here so she has a good base from which to press. And then I would tell her to get her glutes and core tight for this lift. It's hard to tell on this lift, but if I was looking at it from the side, what I'd be looking for is when she extends overhead, is that her wrists, elbows, shoulders, and hips are all in alignment, and that she's not getting a bunch of movement in the hips, and that she's not getting a bunch of arch in her lower back. That is something that we want to avoid. The other thing you'll notice is when she extends overhead, it's almost as if she's performing somewhat of a shrug or a vertical movement through her shoulders. I would actually prevent this by packing the upper mid-back, meaning I would get tight in between the shoulder blades and I would maintain that tension as I press forward. So when she presses overhead, she's going to actually extend her arms just shy of lockout, keeping tension on the front delts, and then return to the starting position. So the first thing I noticed with this video is that his stance is just a little bit narrow. So the first thing I would actually have him do is to widen his stance just a little bit to a little bit wider than shoulder width. This is going to allow him to have a good stable base to press from, and it's going to allow him also to get his glutes core tight so that when he presses overhead, he can deliver as much force to the bar as possible. The second thing I noticed, at least from this angle, is it looks like his hands are rolled back slightly, which can cause some pressure or tension on the wrist. If you're a person that has trouble with wrist injuries or your wrist ever being sprained like I am, you'll know that it's going to be important to kind of roll your hand forward a little bit to lessen some of that pressure in the wrist area. And then the final thing that I noticed is he actually combines two pressing movements. He does an overhead press from the front, and he also does one from the rear or from behind the head. So I would actually advise him to split this into two separate movements. I'd have him do the strict overhead press with a slightly wider than shoulder width grip, and I would have him do a wider grip on the behind the neck press because this is going to open up the shoulder a bit and hopefully prevent any kind of impingement issues that occurs for some people on this particular lift variation.
First off, I would just like to thank Kayla Duncan and the rest of OmniFit for having me on for this episode of the Technique Tuesdays for the month of June. And
I would opt to have her remove the bar from the rack, allowing her to set herself up without really expending energy. I would have her widen her stance to just about shoulder width, allowing her to focus on bracing her core and squeezing her glutes while creating a neutral spine. Typically, I like to tell my clients to set up just outside or in line with their shoulders. So she would take a shoulder width grip, and now with this shoulder width grip, I would have her keep her forearms vertical. So this way, when she does begin the pressing motion, a cue that she can use is to literally punch through the ceiling. Now, you'll notice
in the video that the client is pressing the bar upward and then focusing on what looks to be a vertical shrug. Now, if that is what her program calls for and that is what her coach is having her do, then that's something, that I've personally never seen before. What I would suggest is to keep the bar in a vertical plane of motion throughout the entire press, meaning as the bar travels past her head, she can then push her head forward through her arms, allowing for one continuous motion straight up and down.
As the client begins this overhead press, the first suggestion I would make would be to widen his base, having his stance be about shoulder width apart, just to create a strong base for the pressing action that's going to occur. As you can see, he keeps his wrist, forearms, and his elbows all in a vertical line, allowing him to push straight through the ceiling, back and forth during his pressing. Now, as you can see, he is squeezing tight at the top, but the suggestion that I would tell him is to only bring the bar down to the bottom of his chin, which would allow constant tension on the front and medial delts and put minimal tension transfer on his chest and his triceps. Now, as you can see, he stays tight throughout the entire motion, allowing for a few extra reps to occur beyond failure once he can no longer handle the back and forth motion.
This month, our lift is the deadlift. So you're going to see two coaches, Anthony Oliveira and Layla Nagshane, critique two different female lifters doing a deadlift. So let's get right to it.